Greetings, most esteemed viewers. Yet another boring Just Talk. But this Just Talk is different for the singular reason that I have a new headset. The mic quality should be much better. That is, what you're hearing right now should be much better. I spent a fair bit of money acquiring it, so that should be good. I just wanted to make a couple of announcements before I actually talk about this whole Nerf issue. One thing, I actually have a shadow guide already made with all the details in it. It was an interesting match, but I recently acquired Sony Vegas, and I'm currently trying to learn it. Why do I want to use Sony Vegas? Because I can do a lot better stuff with it than I can with Windows Live Movie Maker. But it takes time, and I'm old, and my cerebral processing capacity is much more limited than, say, a young person such as Zhhk, who seemingly was born with Sony Vegas in his head. Just kidding. But he's been quite helpful in that regard. I don't know how long it'll take. I just want to get some of the basics down, but I would probably give an ETA of maybe another week before the actual shadow guide is published. But it should be a lot nicer, both in video quality, but also in terms of intro and other things. Of course, coupled with a new mic, it should be a lot better as well. So that's out of the way. I think it's necessary to address this Nerf issue, if only because Lord Zhhk made a video about it, and I kind of agree with him on a fair bit of stuff. But I'm not gonna talk about nerfing things. Last time I talked about nerfing things, well, I had some serious problems. Needless to say, I will say that the Piranha GI probably is somewhat unbalanced, but those of you who've played with such characters. But what BioWare is doing, I think, is all well and good with regards to the New Earth DLC, the N7 characters. They're nice and they're very good. But the problem I see is that all the old characters are essentially being left in the dust. And so we have a situation where there really is no reason to take certain characters. Now, here's one of my pet peeves is the Turian Soldier. And as you know, I have a disproportionate number of videos with the Turian Soldier with different builds and stuff. It's because I really like the guy a lot. Of course, he's essentially been eclipsed by the Destroyer. It's also a class I use reasonably often. I like shooting things with guns more than I like using power, so maybe that's why that's the case. And those of you who know BioWare know that I've been spamming Turian Soldier buff threads every 3 days or so in the hopes that something might happen. But let's have a look at the Turian Soldier and the Destroyer. I made an extensive thread with buffs and comparisons at some point in time, about a week ago, I think. Well, let's look at the problem here, just as an example of the wrong approach BioWare is taking. So they have the Destroyer, and they nerf it slightly. They give the rate of fire minus 5%, so it went from 40% in Devastator mode to 35%. I thought that was a mistake. There's really no point. I mean, you kind of notice the difference slightly, but that's neither here nor there. But while all this is happening, you still have the Turian Soldier. He's the same old guy he's always been, and he's really great. I still love running the Claymore Turian Soldier, but he still can't roll. He's still slow as a snail. He still has to choose between, say, using concussive shot, proximity mine versus marksman. So these are all issues. And then what I suggested to buff the Turian Soldier, because I think he desperately needs a buff, is at the very, very least, he needs a roll, obviously, or a hop, at the very, very least. His base movement speed should be increased 10%. I would suggest movement rates close to that of a Turian Soldier. If he's not going to be able to move, then he should be that fast. Another suggestion I made would be to allow a power to be used during marksman. That is to say, fire proximity mine then marksman. That would really significantly improve his DPS performance, but also make him more of an asset to the team. But as it stands now, just looking at the Destroyer versus Turian Soldier, the only thing the Turian Soldier has over the Destroyer are the stability bonuses, which are only applicable to some weapons. If I use the Claymore, it's pretty irrelevant. And also the better accuracy and the better rate of fire via marksman. Apart from that, the destroyer has cluster grenades, which are great. Devastator mode, which has a massive damage boost, as well as the clip size for certain weapons. I want the destroyer to stay as it is. I didn't want the nerf on it. But the problem is that all these other characters are being left in the dust. I mean, this is not universally so. So I think the Turian Sentinel, say compared to the new Sentinel, can still give the new Sentinel, as much as I like the Paladin, a run for the money. But that's not the case with the Turian Soldier. Apart from nostalgic reasons, or the fact that I just love sniping with the Claymore across the map, there's no real reason to use the Turian Soldier over the Destroyer. Their mobility is, well, the Turian Soldier moves a little faster than a slow-as-hell Destroyer, but I actually think the Destroyer is pretty balanced, for example. I mean, that was a good class, very powerful weapons class, but very slow. Has a lot of benefits despite that. The Turian Soldier has been just totally left in the dust. So BioWare needs to start addressing some of these older classes and improving them. They kind of did it with regards to pull. Not that I'm going to be jumping around using pull a whole lot. But instead of the constant nerfs, for example, the Typhoon, which was completely unnecessary. Here I have a UR. I only have it at level 1. That got 2 successive nerfs. One, the penetration power. Okay, I can kind of get that. 100 centimeters or 25. But the most recent damage, rev up nerf. I did some 2-man runs, unsuccessful ones, admittedly, on Platinum with Spectre yesterday, about 3 in total. And I saw how his Typhoon X with level 4 warp, I mean everything you can imagine, the works. He also had an extended barrel, a damage barrel on. Was just not, he was just emptying clip after clip after clip, not taking down the Banshee. In fact, after that, he switched to the Harrier and said it's just a lot better. So these that nerf was not only pointless, it was just kind of absurd. But all the old classes are being neglected. Notice how some of the old classes had been addressed. So the Human Soldier is still very, very good, you know, especially with the Claymore. I haven't tried it with a Piranha, but I can only imagine that that would probably be very effective as well. But there's certain, I mean, the only buff the Turian Soldier ever got was a reduction in CD on Marksman. That's not enough, really. I still die, I'd say at least 75% of the time because I can't roll and I have no mobility. Other than that, it's still one of my favorite classes to use. If he could move 10 to 15% faster, could roll, I would be using, that would be my favorite soldier class, much more so than the Destroyer. I like the Destroyer, but for some reason I just like the Turian Soldier. So I guess this is kind of a stealth attempt at buffing the Turian Soldier. But BioWare needs to look at some of the older classes, because if you're going to be making new DLC and bringing out sort of super classes, and not all of them are super, I think the only 2 classes that stand out as being super are the N7 Demolisher for various reasons we all know. Although I did make a thread about buffing homing grenades because they travel as slow as hell. And the Destroyer, everything else is just pretty good. But by comparison, other classes are definitely being left in the dust. Although I was happy about the Human Engineer's combat drone buff. It's really good now. It still is. But yeah, this is how BioWare needs to proceed ahead. If they want to make, if they're not going to work on game mechanics, make the AI better, make it less of a grind, they need to start looking at some of the older characters. I know a lot of people like Turian Soldiers, but they're reluctant to use them. I see, comments. It would be my favorite if he could run faster or move faster. And also, as Lord Zhhk has said, and I agree with him on this, is buff some of the older weapons. Make them good. I mean, they're just weapons that on gold and certainly on platinum that are just total junk. There's no reason to use them. The Locust, even gold weapons. I mean, who uses the Key Shock still? Yeah, they buffed the Viper. Nice. But BioWare sometimes does get it. The Indra is actually a very nice, rapid, semi-automatic hybrid of a assault rifle and a sniper rifle now. I like using it a lot on all different sorts of characters. Most recently, I started using it on the Demolisher, but as a backup weapon on the Destroyer. So you do have some decent buffs occasionally, but no. It's very clear to me they need to start working on some of the older characters, offering them buffs, because until they do that, this is just going to get worse and worse. I don't know what the next bunch of DLC will be. Maybe it'll be Alien Spectre classes that just outshine everything, including the N7 humans. And if that's the case, by the way, I'm pretty sure, for example, if and when, and I think it will happen, a Turian infiltrator comes out, even if he doesn't have the mobility, he's going to be powerful as hell. I can just see him with who knows what kind of powers, overload, and stability bonuses, along with who knows, maybe even as marksman. That would be a bit overpowered, wouldn't it? Anyway, those are my thoughts. I think really need to start looking at, or BioWare needs to start looking at, and I think we as community members, if you want to use that term, needs to start telling them that, buff the older guys, the Turian soldier. And people, a lot of people don't like me, they don't like some of my threads. They almost universally agree with my Turian soldier buff threads. Give the guy some love. Alright, yes, this is a non-stealth attempt at buffing the Turian soldier. Anyway, with a bit of luck and fumbling around with Sony Vegas, there should be a shadow video later in the week, I hope. And it should be a lot nicer to watch, more enjoyable for you, and the audio quality will be a lot better as well. Thanks for watching. As always, take care, and I look forward to your comments. Ciao.